Hey there, Blue Mages, and welcome back to Blue Academy. My name is Liam, and today I'm here to help you out with Containment Bay Z1T9 or Zurvan Extreme. Before we get started, I just want to say that this fight is quite difficult and is in my opinion one of the hardest fights for Blue Mages, so try not to get too discouraged if you struggle more than normal with it. With that said, let's get started. Zurvan uses the typical circular fighting arena, and for this fight we'll be using the markers shown here. Our default position for the fight will be with the tank on D and the rest of the party on B. The reason we do this is that Zurvan does a nasty cleave for the entire fight, so we only want our tank to be the one taking that. The beginning of the fight starts out high up with Zurvan on his pedestal here, and he'll be knocking down platforms one after another, starting with the east and moving clockwise. During this, Flare Star AoEs will appear on the ground that need to be avoided. There's nothing terribly difficult about this phase, and it ends once he knocks down the fourth platform. At the same time, he stuns the group and deals mild raid-wide damage, signaling the transition to Phase 2. Once we land, we return to our default positions and Zurvan joins us shortly after. If our damage was high enough, which it should be as Blue Mages, we skip the first soar entirely. Zurvan will put an ice puddle on the ground immediately beneath him, which deals damage and slows anyone who steps in it. The first mechanic Zurvan does is a large conal AoE called Biting Halberd. To avoid this, the group runs behind Zurvan to D. After Biting Halberd, he begins casting Southern Cross. At the end of this cast, ice puddles will spawn underneath every player. To avoid this, we wait until the cast finishes to bait the AoEs, and then have the party rotate clockwise to A while the tank moves counterclockwise to C. Finally, Zurvan will use one of three abilities. He can use Tail End, which will require us to move outwards, he can use Cyclical, which requires us to be close to him, or he can use Biting Halberd a second time, requiring us to run behind him yet again. At this point, Zurvan takes off, and now it's time for the adds phase. There are 4 types of enemies that we will encounter in this phase. The first is a Thew, which is a small physical damage dealing add. The second is a Will, which is a larger physical damage dealing add. The third is a Wit, which is a caster that must be killed before it casts Meteor, otherwise the group wipes. The fourth is a Wile, which casts a gaze attack that induces Hysteria. To handle this, the tank will pick up all the adds and then Diamondback. The Wills hit increasingly hard and with bad timing can basically insta-kill the tank. The Wits must be killed first, and then the remaining adds can be AoE'd down together. During all of this, the group must be careful to not look at the while it's channeling its gaze attack. This includes a tank in Diamondback. Hysteria can go through Diamondback and will likely cause your tank to die. After 3 waves, Zurvan will tether us, deal raid-wide damage, and eventually come back to the arena, at which point we return to our default positions yet again. This signals the start of Phase 4, and this is where things really start getting spicy. At the beginning of the phase, Zurvan will create 4 pairs of tethers, 2 blue and 2 red. If at any point 2 tethered players get too far apart, the tether turns purple and a nasty dot is applied to both players. Since one person will be tethered to the tank, and we want to avoid the dot, we will want to stand closer to Zurvan's hitbox than we did in Phase 2. Luckily for us, it is safe for us to do it in this phase since he does not put an ice bundle underneath himself. Shortly after assigning tethers, Zurvan will put a wave cannon debuff on someone. When this goes off, it'll deal line AoE damage, and anyone who takes damage will also be hit by a bleed debuff. To avoid this, we will have the person with this marker rotate over to C. Once wave cannon goes off, it is safe for this player to return to the party stacked at B. Towards the end of the wave cannon cast, the tank will want to use Diamondback. Right after wave cannon, Zurvan will use a multi-hit tank buster called Turfing, followed by a fire AoE. As soon as the tank gets out of Diamondback, they will want to join the group at B. The reason for this is that he casts Southern Cross immediately after, which we will resolve the same way that we did during Phase 2, taking care to not get too far apart from our partners. Once Zurvan does his conal AoE, we will want the tank's partner, as well as a pair of partners whose color is different from the tank's pair, to go and stack with the tank. Essentially, we want to have one pair of each color on either side of Zurvan. We do this because after Southern Cross, he casts Broken Seal. This places circles around him in one of the following patterns. Broken Seal requires that for each circle, someone with the same color tether as the circle be standing in it when it goes off. If it does not, large raid-wide AoE damage goes off, which can be fatal. It is possible to recover from 1 missed seal, but 2 or more is almost certainly going to be a wipe. After the seals go off, Zurvan will do one of Tail End, Cyclical, or Biting Halberd from Phase 2. You will choose whichever is least convenient given your corresponding seal locations. For example, if your seals were far out, then you'll have to get in for Cyclical. If your seals were close to Zurvan, then you'll have to get out for Tail End. If the seals were on either side of him, then one side will have to run behind Zurvan to avoid Biting Halberd. After resolving this, the tank returns to D and the party returns to B again, and the phase repeats with no changes. The sting percentage for Zurvan is around 20%. If your DPS is on point, you can expect to see this immediately before or after the second set of seals. If you're not able to do this before the second set of seals resolves, then you have to handle the soar mechanic. That being said, the DPS check really isn't that tight, but if you find yourself struggling, just double check that you're using the correct food, and use potions if you need to. If you make it through this and you manage to sting Zurvan, then congrats, you've defeated one of the most difficult bosses for Blue Mages. I hope you found the video useful. If you did, go ahead and J-kick that like button, sting that subscribe button, and stay tuned for more Blue Mage content.